Sure.
So good afternoon from Accra and
Calgary.
good afternoon from Calgary, and then good evening from Ghana, Accra. So how are you?
Oh, wonderful, Benjamin. Having a really good day. How about you?
Very good. We can't complain.
That's good. Good.
You can't
Right
complain.
on. Well, we're gonna just have a little chat about current events today.
Okay.
And I thought, if you don't mind, I'll start it off by, explaining to the folks out there what I feel is truly going on in the banking world rather than the political world, okay? Because everybody wants to be focused on politics, and it seems like, but what's really happening is a shift in the monetary system that we saw shift in a major way in the 1970s, away from asset-backed private funding and finance to more and more government-related bonds, MTNs, all that kind of crap, eh? And ever since that time, and then on the front of asset-backed,
you promised not to swear.
Oh yeah, sorry. I said asset.
Yeah.
So but I also have to add in the fact that asset-backed included the idea that most people refer to as the petrodollar, right?
Petrodollar.
And in where I'm at here in Calgary, I'm in the BMO Tower, which is Bank of Montreal, but they only take up like 2 floors retail at the bottom. 7th floor is generally for capital management, and then, private wealth management, and then 9th floor generally for capital management. That's how our banks in Canada kind of structure themselves in these towers. It's kind of all coded, So, but the rest of these towers are filled with either lawyers, alcoholic lawyers, because most of them are alcoholic. And because they can't tell the truth, so they just go and drink themselves silly. Like if they could tell the truth, they wouldn't be into alcohol. And then the other majority of the office spaces are filled with oil and gas people, because Calgary and Alberta is an oil and gas province still, in spite of the horrific shit kicking that they've taken in the last, I don't know how many years, on the price and the big battle that's been going on. But that's all part of this story, okay? So 76-ish or thereabouts was when Canada went away from the gold standard and started borrowing money from the banks for their government. And, it's just so ridiculous, because as you and I have discussed so many times, there's no such thing as debt. So they pretend that there's some debt to somebody that autographs a piece of paper. And that just was more and more, manipulation and exploitation of the monetary system, away from asset-backed and true asset-backed funding, or even finance and investment. But I like to call it funding rather than finance and investment. So the thing is, Benjamin, that it's not only the ancient accounts of gold that, are held by Africa and other nations of the world, and continents on the world, but a lot of more current assets like oil and gas that are not part of the agenda, right? The global agenda. So Middle Eastern families and Middle Eastern groups that, didn't kind of toe the line were hazed, and their funds are blocked, okay? Blocked in the banks. So there's a governed mind above the governed minds, right? That governs the flow of currency. And, then the governed mind tries to control the flow of currency as well. But that's what's all shifting, okay? And that shift is happening from the levels of asset-backed funding coming through peer-to-peer, rather than going through this governed mind system, which I call the New World Order, where Bilderberg kind of tweaked it in 1944 at the Bretton Woods, but it's always been there to a certain extent. But that that system of manipulation and exploitation of the monetary system got to a point in, from the 70s on where it was just utterly ridiculous, hazing the flow of funding to private investors or even private funders or foundations that want to help society. It just was ridiculous. So that's what's really truly going on behind the so-called political or monarchy scene. Okay, so I thought I'd introduce it with that, and then we can go from there, brother.
So, in spite of all this, money changing here, moving from one system to the other, we haven't seen much of it when it comes to Africa really benefiting from this, paradigm shift or changes in these monetary systems. What do you think about the impending one or the future?
Well, the thing with Africa was that they, the imperialism that came into that area of the world, let's just call it, compared to North America, where they just came in and, got rid of all the natives and just, took over kind of thing. Eh?
Yeah.
But in Africa, they couldn't do that. There's too many people and too much culture and civilization and stuff like that, that it was just impossible. So they ran it from that imperial status, not only in a political sense, but also in a monetary sense.
Yes.
So the governed minds of Africa were still getting funding through this system, and it's funding, it's not finance. They can tell you all they want about paying interest, but they don't. But as long as they had birth certificate bonds and the whole, structure in place, then they were bringing money into these governments of Africa as well. But on the private side, that's where they really screwed up, because there was no private funding flowing through to the benevolent people and benevolent groups in Africa. And all they tried to do then was, oh well, we'll fix it, we'll throw some money at it. No, bullshit. It's about helping the people, getting them what they want and what they need. Number one being water in Africa, in my mind, because once you have water, you have food. Once you have food, you don't have to worry about anything else. So they'll look at, the people of Africa can look after growing their own food once they have the water supply. So Gaddafi knew that, and you and I know what he did and what happened there.
Aquify systems.
Oh my God, and that was one of the big turning points in this political game too, when they went in and not took out Gaddafi himself, but wiped out that aquifer that he had built, pumping water up from the primal sources and building the aquifers that could have watered the desert, for Christ's sake. So that's a little bit of Africa for you, but you can toss in some of your thoughts, please.
Okay. For me, what I see, I also like to contribute in the area of how foreign aids come in. Okay, foreign aid, we all know, is a type of assistance that a country voluntarily transfer to another country, which can take in the form of gifts, grants, loan, and countries may provide aid through this capital supplies, such as humanitarian aid and military assistance. And often more than not, it goes into the wrong hands, and therefore the purpose is circumvented. And it is not, the main aim of this aid is not achieved. So in the end, the people suffer in the end. And you sit on a whole, most of these countries that are aid dependent sit on a lot of resources. So it becomes, the foreign aid rather become a tool for manipulation rather than, aiding the people, because now you have taken so much and the money is not getting to the right people. And so you still want more. and the people are crying, and the donors are also looking at the situation. So we can provide you more, provided that you also give us what we want. Okay. So in the end, uh, our mineral resources are siphoned in exchange for, what do you call it, this kind of foreign aid, or our leaders become more or less dictators, um, and uh, what do you call it, save the money that they want to, get, and use it for other purposes other than uh, um, the intended purpose for the aid.
Yeah.
And you look like countries in Africa, and you look at Democratic Republic of Congo, which sit on the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, as a less economically developed, country. You mean Congo is a less developed, economically less developed country? This is a land full of, rich resources. It is only mismanaged in a way, or our leaders are not doing what they are supposed, to do. And so in the end, it makes countries more dependent on other nations. Okay. And then the managing of our resources tend to uh, go the other way. And so in the end, people do not benefit. And then we end up, becoming more or less, um, you go below the ladder. So
Yeah.
that's what I can say for the African countries.
Well, and you know what? Benjamin, it's so similar in other parts of the world too, where the group that's above the governments encourages separation and fighting among the people to keep them off track.
Mhm.
And oftentimes in Africa, that's the case too, where it's like I say, the same in every other country. It's just a little bit more posh in the United States,
Yes.
getting the Democrats against the Republicans or whatever, all that bullshit story. But and even on the world level, when they now the CCP is the big bad guys and all that bullshit, come on, like that's crap too, because it's still these banking groups way above that want to maintain that system that we talked about earlier, that are in that position of encouraging the idea of left wing and right wing, or communism and capitalism, which is the two wings of the same bird. We've said that many times too, Benjamin. But I wanted to add something that you mentioned there, and you've talked to me about this before, and I'd like your comments on Ghana, and how, I mentioned water earlier, and how Ghana has probably one of the biggest dams and one of the best water supplies for a nation in Africa. Now, does that affect, like, are you guys doing a lot of irrigation, like, and stuff like that in Ghana? Because I know Ghana is probably one of the most peaceful and organized, politically organized nations in Africa. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, bro.
Currently, this present government is doing a lot when it comes to farming. He wants us to grow. He introduced a policy of farming, and then when you farm, you'll be able to process the whole, what do you call it, stuff, rather than shipping it abroad raw, in its raw form, which doesn't benefit anybody. And at the end of the day, the, what do you call it, you lose some of the post harvest, or what we call post harvest losses. You end up getting so much from the farm, but because of preservation and then processing, you end up losing it. So cottage industries and what he calls something 1D, 1F. That means in every farming community can get a one dam, a sort of dam, which can be used to help the farmers. I always, when I walk through the cities of Africa, sometimes I say something that should be a blessing to us kills us. What do I mean by that? And when it rains, the rain should rather be a blessing to you, but because of poor infrastructure sightings, the rain end up, filling gutters, and then you can't dam the water properly. And so in the end, it end up causing floods and then, killing a lot of people. But in properly structured economies where these things have been taken into considerations, you know that the water resources, when it rains, or when it snows, it is properly dammed or channeled into proper reservoirs so that these resources that have been provided by nature can be used for its intended purposes. So over here, what the government is doing is he's building dams, in his first year, that is the second year now. In his first year, most of these projects were started, and what we call one village, one dam, and then he started also a project called one district, one factory. Okay, which means that in every village, which has a farming projects or farming businesses can, develop some of this produce and sell it rather than process it for packaging, for export, and for local, what do you call it, use. Okay, so in the end, people benefit rather than it minimizes the rural urban migration, so people can be in the village rather than move to the city centers or move to a place which is more or less more developed than what they have. And like I've told you some time ago that civilization actually started along river banks, okay, or where there are water bodies, okay. So if you have proper resources of water, you can develop. And as we discussed the other day, the first president, our first president, Dr. Nkrumah, built one of the biggest dams, the biggest dam, the Akosombo Dam, which we also have a lot of hydroelectricity from it. Most of the people in Ghana also depend on it for its water, what do you call it, drinking water, and for transportation as well. But some of these things are not, well, I would say they are in the process of being developed further, like water transportation, uh, like irrigation systems, though there are, I mean, we can do better. So that is all that I can say.
Yeah, sorry, Benjamin. I was moving around because I couldn't hear you very good where I was at, but I can hear you better now.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
quieter here.
Yeah. Okay.
But I did hear what you're saying, and it's very similar, but strangely and strangely familiar to Canada. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because we have all of this agricultural capability here. But what we've done is we've allowed the hegemony, as I like to call it, the imperialism of globalist agenda to come in and, filter all of our agriculture through, like, basically only a few companies, like Cargill, for instance. I mean, over half of our beef production goes through Cargill to get to the next stop. And
Yeah.
who benefits from that but Cargill, right? So what you were saying is quite resonant with what's happening here, where Africa needs manufacturing. They
Yeah.
need to go to the next step and then feed their own people first, you know, rather than just produce and ship it all over to some other, you know, Europe or America and say, here's your bananas, you know, thank you very much, kind of thing. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, Benjamin, and it's quite similar, like I say, to our nation, except that we've only got 30 million people in a country the size of pretty near half of Africa. Like, it's just immense, the place that we live in, you know.
Yeah. So it's interesting because if the products are sent or shipped raw, I can the buyer can determine how much he pays you, okay, or he plays with you and say, ah, we have so much of cocoa, we don't need it now, so we can buy it at this price. And because you have shipped all your products all the way across the Atlantic to maybe UK, US, and your buyer is saying that he doesn't need it, what do? Do you send it back? Consider the transportation. So in the end, you end up begging or begging that your product should be purchased at maybe a price which is not affordable to you, or which is not beneficial to you. So in the end, you lose. But if you can process these products into finished forms and then sell it, you earn more rather than shipping it raw. And um, also the people can benefit, and you reduce, what do you call it, your importation on some of this product. Like if you have cocoa and you are in the end importing chocolate into your country, why don't you take the raw resources and then develop them into chocolates and other products? And there are a lot of raw materials here that can be transformed into other products, which can be beneficial to the people rather than buying from outside. One of the things that I learned uh, in the past year was our rice importation dropped significantly. Why? Because the government decided to um, aid farmers who want to go into uh, rice farming. And when they did, it benefited the country so well. Our importation of rice was cut. That means the money that the government would have used to import this rice is rather pumped or channeled into other, things or other areas of the economy which need it most. And beside that, um, when this also happened, the people know what actually they are eating, okay? Because a rice may be sitting in a rice, what do you call it, exporting nation. It may be sitting in their storehouse for who knows how many years. Because they don't want it, they or it have stayed in these warehouses for maybe like 10 years, 15 years, and they don't want it. They repackage it into, what do you call it, into nice sacks and then ship it to this non-growing rice, consuming countries, and then you enjoy it. But unbeknown to you, it might have been sitting in the warehouse for maybe over 20 years, over 15 years, 10 years, 5 years. But um, when it is grown in your country and you also, eat from, what do you call it, the freshly harvested, you see that the taste is even different, and then it also promote good health also, because what you are growing, what you are eating come from your end. So I think in the end, countries stand to benefit. African countries or developing countries stand to benefit when they can, use what do you call it, dams that they have built on their own to develop farms and then benefit from the farms rather than depending on, foreign aids, which end up into wrong pockets and uh, the what do you call it, the cycle. Uh,
Yeah.
it, so that's what I can
Well,
say.
well, that's, it kind of segues into the next thing I was thinking of, Benjamin, when we want to focus our energy and the media wants to focus our energy on politics, right? When capitalism and communism basically work hand in hand, just like it says in the Shanghai airport on the wall. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that, it's there to exploit mankind and to maintain some kind of organization that we come to know as globalization, right? And globalization is a capitalist, very internationally capitalist agenda that supports something like Walmart, who can
Mm-hmm.
sit back and pay whatever they like for the rice because they've got all kinds of people lined up waiting to sell it to them, right?
Yeah, they call the shots.
Yeah. So I mean, but again, that's where, that's what it was, okay? And if we keep our attention on that stupid looniverse govern mind gong show that's going on, and we can joke about that. I love to kid around about it, don't get me wrong. Like Joe Biden, really, there's a topic that we can laugh about. And even Trump to a certain extent, but Biden, oh my God. But if we think about it in a broader sense, and what we're talking about now, as far as, moving back to private funding that's not manipulated and exploited
Mm-hmm.
by the banking system, that has the potential to get through to the people for manufacturing,
Sure.
for distribution,
Sure.
for water, for,
The
that's
basic
where it's at.
the basic necessities of people. Then you are talking about a fair and equitable sharing of the resources of the earth for the benefit of mankind. But if
Yes.
it's go in a particular loop, which end up I'm giving Randall
Yeah.
$5,000 or $5 million, but this $5 million, you know, it is, what do you call it? It's a kind of like a slush fund. The money
Yep.
is there, but it doesn't end up in the what do you call it? The project that is supposed to end up, but somebody benefits so much from it, and then it's a kind of slush fund, and we
Yep.
need to look at all these things if we are to move on as a species. I think the quantum financial system is there to be able to help humanity move forward with some of these things. Randy, we have about 3 minutes more, so
Okay.
I'll give all to you so that you can
Wind it up.
wind it up. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, brother. It was enjoyable, and I mean, we'd do this again sometime. And it's just so nice to get out of that political looniverse realm
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
few
yeah,
days and
yeah,
discuss some real
yeah,
reality.
realities. Yeah.
Yeah. Technology and, all of that. We know it's suppressed. We know there's lots of potential there, but the bottom line is getting the people fed
Yeah.
proper, healthy food and getting water into them. And that's the simplicity of our conversation.
Yeah.
So I'll end it on my side and then let you take it away with peace, harmony, love, abundance, and freedom for everyone and everything every day on my mind, brother. Abundance,
Yes,
sovereignty, health,
indeed.
love, and euphoria. Keep smiling. I love that
Yeah.
smile.
Yeah. So that is it. And we
Okay.
like you rightly said, in the end goal is being people oriented rather than, you know, this government, kind of, stuff. It doesn't help anybody, and
Yep.
it rather bring us more problems. So be people oriented, solution oriented. Look at the basic needs of the people, meet it, and then you can. Everybody can benefit. It's a win-win situation. It's not the winner take is all as in other countries. So let's be more or less concentrated in the benefits of the people rather than individuals. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well put, brother. I love you.
I love you. Bye.
Stopped recording?
Yeah, I'm leaving now.
Okay.
Mhm.